was bad.
Hello, and this is Grace Beyond the Walls. I'm Minister Christopher Tate, and I am excited that you're going to join me for the next few moments to talk about forgiveness and restoration. One thing in life that we find oftentimes that people will always remember the bad things you do over the good. I don't care how much good you do in your life. And they tend to make you feel that once you've messed up, once things have taken a wrong turn, that you cannot come back and recover from the damage that's been done. Well, over the next few minutes, you're going to meet some people that's going to really tell you a different story. Men who have been through this system, been locked up for many years, who have made bad choices once upon a time, made bad decisions for whatever reason. But the point of the whole film is not to focus on the bad things that they did, but the decisions they made to do better and to go right and go home and do better as citizens. And once again, I have to admit that some of the stories you're going to hear might be a little bit disturbing at points, and it may not be for everybody. If you were someone who's recently lost a loved one at the hands of someone else, or know someone who's been victimized sexually by somebody else, or anything of that nature, you may want to think about it and pray before proceeding to the rest of this film, because these things will be mentioned in the film. But again, we're not focusing on the crime itself that was committed. But I wanted you to hear the voices of the men that made these decisions once upon a time and hear their stories about where they were before, where they have come through, and where they are now. The point is, you can recover from making bad choices in life. You can recover from making mistakes. And also, you're going to hear from a mother whose son was incarcerated and got sick while incarcerated and was sent home to die. And God allowed him to live a few more months, only to be a huge blessing to his family. You're going to hear her story because we want you to know what mothers have to go through when they have to say goodbye to their children for a long period of time. We want you to hear their story, not from reporters, not from COs, not from preachers, but straight from their mouths. So please, sit back, relax, and eventually you will enjoy Grace Beyond the Walls. My very first guest today is Mr. Delante Ronald, who was given 30 years, and he actually did 15 and a half for involuntary manslaughter and burglary. I want you to, first of all, take me back. How old were you when you caught your charge?
I was 16 and 5 months returning to 17 years old.
Okay, 16. Let's go back to 15. I want you to tell me, if I were to meet somebody who knew you at 15, who would they say Delante is? What the neighborhood, your friends, your classmates?
I would say typical kid, knucklehead, loyal to people that's loyal to me, good friends, but made some bad decisions.
And was it gang related back then? Okay, so let's move forward to the day of your charge. What's your charge? Take me back to the morning you woke up. Of course, you had no idea that within 24 hours your life would change like it did, but it did. So tell me exactly what happened that day.
I spent the day with my brother, went over to brother baby mother's house, spent time with my niece. Pretty much was over there all day. Then I get a call once I get near my neighborhood. A guy I thought was my friend, asked me to do something, and I was like, yeah, I'm with it.
Ask you to do what?
To go in someone's home and rob this person have money, etc.
So did your friend know this person?
Not at all.
But you didn't care. You were just following. Your friend said, let's do it, and you said, you'll do it. Did you have a gun with you already?
Mm-hmm.
Why were you carrying a gun?
Well, the way I grew up, like I said, I'm from D.C., so it's kind of growing up in D.C., you kind of like need to have one in certain places. Like even if you live in a neighborhood that's like it's more like beefs is more neighborhood situation. So if I'm in a neighborhood, I'm not doing anything, and another neighborhood don't like my neighborhood, they would you're a target. Some people make it out, some people don't. So I did it for my own self-protection.
Had you, prior to that time, had any situations where you had to use a gun before? Was it just to scare somebody, or just had you fired a gun yet
Never fired.
at somebody before,
Yes.
but not to this extent? So what happened? You guys get to this man's house,
Uh-huh.
and he was home, obviously.
So
Okay. Did you know he was home? Y'all had planned to just rob the place.
that's what I was told. Yeah, I was from my perspective. That's
So
what
you
it
get in. What happened?
was. Get in there. The guy was in there. I was kind of like, oh, and then went in there, stuck up behind him. Held him down. We tied him up or whatever. I leave, ransack the house or whatever.
Just you and the other guy.
Yeah,
Y'all tied him up. You ransacked the house.
yeah. Found some money or whatever. Found the car keys. Went outside. Told my co-defendant that be outside waiting on him. So
In
I
the man's
left out.
car.
Mm-hmm, and I left out.
Then what happened?
So I was there for like 30 minutes, and then he came out, left, dropped him off. I took.
So when he came out, you didn't know what had happened after you left
I
out.
didn't know what had happened because in the home when I left,
So you go back to your normal life.
Mhm.
You had how much money from this?
it was about like 5,000.
How much did he give you?
That's what I had.
You had 5,000.
No,
So you thought that was it?
yeah,
Were you fearful that something may happen behind this? Or he didn't tell you what he did.
no.
So how did you find out what he did?
Like I say, normal, trying to live a normal life. Went to school the next day, history class. I see it on the news. I was like, oh, look, and I'm like, oh. Back in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I was in there last night, and it was on the news. They were saying suspects, and they didn't know who did it. So I was like, okay, now give me a lawyer.
You saw it on the news?
I saw it on the news.
Oh my
In
God.
history class.
So did you call your friend?
Tried to call him. No call. Nobody knew who he was at. So I went to get a lawyer.
And up to this point, you did not know that he actually shot the man. So
So
your guy never was shot. So then what happened?
like I said, it was clear. So look, made a couple calls, got a lawyer just in case, if it did hit me. So it took like 30 days later. That's when all the rumors started coming out. People saying that I was the one that did it, and this person said that. Didn't pay no much mind of it. Came to school.
Were you with your mom and dad at the time?
I was with my mom.
Your mom. And she probably was shocked beyond belief.
Yeah, I mean,
Did she foresee this coming? If I was to sit and talk to her right now, would she tell me that I knew this would happen one day? I just saw it coming. Mothers tend to have that instinct about that.
I wouldn't say this situation, no, but I knew she probably think I was doing something, but probably not as bad as the magnitude it was.
So when you got picked up, were you at school or at home?
I was at school.
And so let's fast forward past all this to the day of the judge telling you how much time. The judge telling you that you now have to have, 30 years. When you heard them words come out of his mouth. Of course, at this point, you don't understand the whole, you can get out after 10 to 15, whatever. All you're hearing is the first number, which is the biggest number there is, right? So he tells you got 30 years. What went through your mind?
Man, I thought my life was over. I ain't gonna lie. 16, I'm like
6.
30 years.
So he tried you as an adult.
Yes, tried to be an adult.
And your mom was sitting there in court when he said this. Anybody else?
Mom, brothers, sisters, godmother, grandmother, uncles, all that.
This is why I tell people all the time that when a person gets incarcerated, up to 100 people get incarcerated with them. Because just like your life changed, everybody sitting in the courtroom, their life changed. Everybody back home waiting to hear what happened, life changed. The victim's family, life changed. People in the neighborhood who saw all the police activity, life changed. So, I mean, it's so much that goes into this thing. So, did your mother have an outburst in court at all? Or?
Mother, I can hear, she's behind me. So
You never look back?
I looked back and she was crying. Grandma was crying. So it was like, for me, it was like real touching because I was like, back in my mind, all I kept thinking about was 30 years and then my family.
So this was your first time in prison. Have you been locked? Have you been in jail before?
No, I've been like juvenile charges, but this is
Nothing
my
like
first
this.
incarceration. Yeah.
So now you're going what they call the big house. So tell me, when you first got to prison, were you scared? Were you nervous? Were you depressed? Or what goes through a 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid's mind? Wow.
Well, for me, it was different. It was like so in the term for us being on the streets, like you coming into a place that's confined with the same dudes that you run across paths with off the streets is in now.
So you saw people that you knew in jail. That helped you?
Family, met a couple of cousins that was in the same job as when I first came in.
Did you have any incidents in jail that you felt your life was in danger?
I wouldn't say couple of disputes or whatever, but nothing like life-threatening. I mean, I had a couple of fights, but that's just like, it's a norm. Things like that's gonna happen.
It's interesting when I go do prison ministry, sometimes I get to an institution, and regardless if it's local or long distance, you don't know until you get there if the institution's on lockdown. Every now and then, a chaplain will call me and tell me, oh, don't come today because we're on lockdown. But for the most part, if it's not a regular prison that you go to, I've driven all the way down to ECI and get there on lockdown. And when I tell my people that we didn't have service because it's on lockdown, everybody goes into panic. Like, oh my God, they watch too much television. They a scene from Oz just broke out and everybody's about to break out of jail and all this other kind of stuff. So I understand that lockdowns happened quite a bit. 15 and a half years of 30. When they told you about to go home, I remember seeing you.
Yeah.
I remember seeing you at the prison. Your whole face was lit up like a light bulb. Tell me about when you walked. We were sharing some stuff before we came to the studio about when you got out of jail.
Yeah.
What was it like for you? Tell the cameras about the looking behind you thing that you told me about.
I came home January 12th. It was like a little bit after 12. I was up there at 7:30. A good friend of mine, very good friend, accountability partner, called him. He would have been here today, but he couldn't make it. But came and picked me up. Did for me day one, man. I came out, and we took me out and everything. We went to the mall. So as I was in the mall, me being incarcerated for so long, it took me. I had to get adjusted to being around a bunch of people because as I was in the mall, walking around, looking at people behind me, kind of like not nervous, but just like kind of like just felt weird because I was used to being around people that had these charges and so on and so on. So I had to get adjusted. And this was hours that I got out, so I still had the mind frame of the jail mentality as I was out in community. I
mean, after 15 years, that's a long time. You were 16 going in there. It's almost like your lifetime all over again. You also shared with me that you ran, I'm not going to name her name, but you ran into a CO who had given people trouble inside the house. And her reaction when she saw you on the streets now.
She was shocked. I was with my homeboys at Rural Farms and Lowell, and I got the car, put gas in my homeboys, so I looked, and I see her get on her vehicle, and she made eye contact with me, looked at me. So I'm just like back in my mind, I'm like, wow, like who would have thought I'd run into this lady that gave me tickets, that put me on lockup. And I just shook my head. I'm like, man, back in my mind, like, see, you never know who you run into.
And you did nothing, did you?
Did nothing.
See, the average person, some of y'all watching this now, think that this jailhouse mentality is something locked, embedded in these men and women, and that they're just destined to always get revenge back on people. But again, here you got a situation where you have a CO that gave you trouble inside, and there are guys who have gotten out of jail who have run into judges or officers or staff and have done harm to them. I mean, as a volunteer, part of my training, they tell you, be careful having communication with guys outside of jail because of danger. So you're back home now. Tell me what life's been like since you've been home.
Man, it's wonderful. Spent a lot of time.
Has it always been wonderful though?
I mean, you had. I'm not gonna lie. You kind of get sometimes things might get a little overwhelming, but like I say, with having God in my life and just not giving up and the will not to give up, I got to keep pushing forward, so I just suck it up and keep it moving. How
would you say prison ministry helped you or didn't help you, or what did it do for you while you were incarcerated?
It helped me a whole lot. Like I said, I came in, I was young. I was blessed to be snatched up by guys that you know, and they invited me to church, and I started going. And I actually was ushering there, and I met you. Like I said, and I pretty much grew up, and then I learned a whole lot that I didn't know. Because I was going to church when I was home, but just not as much.
I shall recover everything that I lost, everything that the devil took from me. God will replenish
My next guest is Raynard Dugger, who the judge gave 20 years for first-degree murder and did 6 years and 8 months.
Yeah.
6 years and 8 months. How old were you when you got your charge?
I was 22.
22.
22.
You look 22 now.
I'm at 22.
I want you to take me back to 21.
Mm-hmm.
Who was Ray at 21? What was he doing? What was his life about?
Ray was trying to build a music career in the world, doing rap music, and I was trying to endorse it by having this, this criminal mentality, because that's what drove people in, and also was financing it by selling drugs and making money.
Would you say that you were trying to be hard?
Well, as far as when it came to projecting it out in the public, yeah. I mean, I was kind of built like that, how I grew up, but as far as putting it out there in the front, you do have to do a little bit extra, you know what I'm saying, to make people believe it. So.
I come to your neighborhood at 21 years old. Ask somebody, tell me about Ray. Who is this dude?
At 21,
21, yeah.
they gonna be like, man, young and crazy.
Crazy how
they gonna be like, he cool.
anything?
They gonna be like, he cool, but yeah, they gonna be like, man, young and crazy. He got a little temper.
Had you been in trouble before?
Trouble, but I never got convicted for anything.
Okay, so you were one that carried a gun back then.
Yeah, absolutely.
What, and did you carry a gun because you felt you needed it, or you just felt that that's part of who I am?
Yeah, it's part of the neighborhood I grew up in. That's just what you do. You carry a gun as early as you can, as early as you can find one or buy one.
Prior to your charge, had you used a gun before?
Yeah, absolutely.
On people or just?
Yes.
Okay. Take me to the day of that you caught your charge. What happened that day?
Yeah, so I'm doing my thing at a show, at an event.
You were performing?
Yeah,
Okay.
performing at an event. The fight break out.
Had you already performed?
No, I was walking to the stage to perform, and as I'm like setting the mics up.
They call you up to perform,
Yeah.
and as you're walking up to perform, a fight breaks out with who?
Yes, I don't know at the time, so it was just a big crowd, and everybody's rushing back to the back of the club.
But not with you?
No.
Okay.
But to the back of the club, to the bathroom. So I see someone that I'm with flag me down and say, "Come back here." So I just dropped the mic. I ran to the bathroom, and my best friend was fighting in the bathroom.
So you made it to the microphone?
Yeah, I made it to the microphone. I ain't even said a word. I was just setting it up.
So you dropped the mic and ran to go save your friend,
Yeah.
not knowing what you're about to run into.
Nah, not
okay,
knowing
so
at
then
all.
what was back there?
What was back there was a couple of my friends, about 6, 7 of my other friends was fighting in the bathroom. But my best friend, the person was way bigger than me. He was getting beat up in the bathroom, and
So you come
my
into his
loyalty.
defense.
Yeah, I came to his defense.
So did you fight with your hands, or did you go straight to the
Nah,
gun?
I pulled the gun out, and when I pulled the gun out, the guy ran off, and I just chased him down in the parking lot and met him at his car. And when he had his hand on the handle of his car, I shot him right there 6 times.
Shot him 6 times. Where?
In the face area, in the head area. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people took off running at that point.
Nah.
They can hear 6 shots and no one ran.
Yeah, well, I mean, in DC, it happens everywhere and every day. So
Did you
nobody
run?
just stood there. No,
Where were your friends?
right there.
All y'all just shot and just kind of walked away.
Yeah, just walked. Away.
And this man's body, did you know the guy?
No.
So what happened next?
So what happened next? I was on a run, got caught.
How long before you got
I was
caught?
on a run, I think like 9 days.
Wow, that's not
Like
long at
9
all.
days. That's not long.
Did somebody turn you in? You didn't turn yourself
Yeah,
in?
no, I think that's a long story. I don't know how it really happened, but it seemed like it does.
So let's fast forward to court.
Okay.
Who came with you to court?
At that time,
When you got your,
right when it was
got your
time to get
sentence?
sentenced, at that time it was my parents, both of my parents actually.
Were you, wait, both your parents, were they still together?
They were still together.
You mean to tell me you had mom and dad at
I
home?
had mom and dad at home. Yeah.
And you still, why would you say that you lived this life with both parents at home? Because the average person,
I understand, right? Yeah.
average person that you hear this kind of stuff about, you didn't have dad in your life, or mom was a drug addict,
Mhm.
but your parents, were they both working,
I mean, they both
regular
was,
people.
Both was working. My mom, she had some disabilities that hindered her from working too much.
But they were not in the streets or nothing like that.
No, they wasn't in the
church.
streets, but they were in the church, but they didn't really. I didn't really see what church was, about through them.
Were you still living with them at the time?
At the time that happened, yes, actually.
So you're in court. You're about to get your sentence. I'm sure the victim's family was there.
No, they wasn't.
They wasn't?
No.
Wow. Were you scared at this point?
No.
Now, you told me in our interview something I have to ask you on camera.
Please.
I asked you, what was your reaction when the judge told you that he'd given you 20... First of all, how'd you only get... You shot this guy 6 times. How'd you only get 20 years?
Yeah, because the short version of it, I took what's called a plea. In the streets, they call it a cop, but I took a plea to the 20 years.
That prevents you from having to have a jury trial.
Right.
Okay. So he tells you you have to do 20 years, and you told me in our interview, as your parents broke down crying, you smiled.
Yeah.
And the judge saw you smile.
Yeah.
What was that smile about?
Man, that smile, and I told the judge, he asked me too. I told him. And I said, this smile, I said...
Hold on, before you tell him.
Yeah.
He must have thought you were being cocky. Because, I see it on
Right.
online all the time.
Right.
You get these guys who have been convicted, and they give these smirks when they look back at the victim's family like, yeah, whatever. You think this judge may have thought, okay...
Nah, he knew what was going on, really, because he heard about me before he saw me.
What did he hear about you?
He heard about how I changed my life around a relationship that I had found with God. He was hearing about those things from my lawyer.
This is between the time you murdered the guy and...
Right, so that was 18 months difference.
And you were locked up the entire time.
Right.
So he's talking
I was
about...
waiting 18 months to get sentenced.
During so you were going to church and prison, and jail.
Right.
Not prison, yes,
Right,
so jail.
right.
The DC jail?
The Upper Marlboro County
Marlboro.
jail, yeah.
So you smiled, and the judge, he asked you about it at the time?
Yeah, he said, why do you seem unbothered, about getting 20 years? I said, it's not that I'm unbothered. I said, I'm just not afraid because I know that I'm not going to do this alone. Like, God is with me.
That's a very powerful thing. That's an extremely powerful thing. That's a very brave thing to do, is to smile at a time like that. Again, because the average person,
Right.
keep in mind, when people know that you've done something like this, they don't think you have the capacity
Right.
to touch God. They don't
Right.
think you have the capacity to even acknowledge who God is.
Right.
So for you to have this happen, you're smiling, people I know probably want to jump up and rip your head off because,
Right.
oh really? I have to
Yeah,
cry
the
at
nerve,
home,
right.
but you're in here
Right.
smiling.
Right.
How does that work? So that was a very brave thing. So now you go to prison. Did you get scared at any point?
To be honest, nervous. I was nervous.
Because you didn't have any gang affiliation.
Nah, no gang.
So unlike other guests we have on this documentary, did you know anybody in jail?
Nah, that was the nerve. That's where the nerves came from. Of just nervous of running into people that you just don't want to run into.
What was jail life like for you?
I had to speak from being saved, a Christian aspect, because I walked into prison being saved, because I got saved in prison. But it was challenging. It wasn't fearful. It just was challenging because you have to really exercise your faith in it, or else you might as well not. You know what I'm saying?
What do you mean by exercise your faith?
What I mean is, if you're going to believe God, like people that don't believe God will hold you accountable. Like if they see you with a Bible, or they see you in service in the prison and things like that, they want to hold you. Like, and they see you doing something that's not right, they want to pull you up on it and really see like that and going to prove to you that you're faking.
You know, I say this all the time in the civilian church. The prison's church structure is so different than the civilian church structure.
Yeah.
In prison, if we have service from 7 to 9, there's no such thing as 7:30 to 9-ish.
Right.
You know, it's 7:30 to 9. 7, that's it.
Right.
You don't get a choice.
Right.
The church fills up instantly. Nobody comes late.
Right.
Altar call, you can't even find a space on the altar. Everyone comes. And now you're telling me that people in prison hold you accountable for your calling.
Really
Could you
do.
imagine if that happened on the street? You on the street want to do wrong, and somebody, you
Right.
say,
Right. Exactly. That don't happen.
You know, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
So, at what point did you realize you're going to get sent home way earlier? You didn't even do half your sentence.
nah, that's not half.
So, how? did you get out so early?
So, being when I first got incarcerated, I gave my life to the Lord. I was going to commit suicide.
Whoa, back up. You did what?
I was going to commit suicide.
This is before your sentence.
Right, before the sentencing. This was about a month after I had just entered in through the doors.
And prison ministry convinced you?
They played a part on it. It played a part because I was looking around and I seen, my new life, and I would notice that it was people that knew God and, everybody else doing their own thing. And I just figured, like, I don't want this life. I got to find a way to even end it or win. And the only way I could figure it out was take my own life. That way I say I won. And God stopped me in my attempt to commit suicide. I heard his voice.
I remember meeting you, ECI. You were on fire. You had this vigor about you. I get guys, don't get me wrong, I meet hundreds, if not thousands of men who have that same fire, build a passion about you. And you kept telling me, when I get out of here, trust me, it's on, Chris. It's on. We're going to be doing this, that, and the other together. And I look at you now, not just in person, but you're connected to a lot of my close friends. You got your internet stuff going on. So tell me, what has life been like for you since you've been home?
Yeah, it's I would say that it's okay. I'm gonna put it like this: it's easier because you have more outlets to express your faith. But it's in a sense, it's just a little harder than prison because you don't have nobody saying service time, chapel time. No one's telling you. So that's hard. That's the only hard part about it.
You took a life. Okay. Have you had to deal with people who have not forgiven that part?
Myself.
What about your relatives, your family?
My family, I think some of my close relatives, like I think my sisters still like look at me and they still kind of, confused about who am I?
Now I gotta ask you this too. It might be a little tender to ask you this, but I have to, because of where you are now.
Right.
Can you remember the face of the man?
I didn't see his face though.
You never saw his face?
Don't even know his face.
You shot him from the back, so you never saw his face?
It was in the front, but it was like everything just was happening.
Did you ever see his family in court?
No.
Because you didn't really ever you took a plea.
Right.
So since you come home, you've had no contact with anybody?
One person, I do music now, gospel music, and I had an album release. And one of his kids' mothers showed up at the album release.
Your victim's child's mother?
Yeah.
And what was that like?
It was a blessing because she came to let me know that God is on my side. Because she told me a testimony about something that happened to her because of what I did and how God saved her from it. And through the time from when she realized I was home, she said that God just kept dealing with her and telling her to reach out to me, and she just refused. She finally did.
How old are you now?
32.
32. To sit across the table from 22 Ray, the little cocky kid who thought he had it going on, and to know what God has blessed you to do, what would you tell him? What's your word for him? What would you say to old Ray?
I would tell that little skinny, little scrawny, little light-skinned guy. I would say, man, it don't matter what people say about you. Like, the reason why they're saying something about you is because they see something in you where you're not afraid to be you, and they want to change that. You know what I'm saying? They want you to be just like them so they can feel comfortable, having you around, and they don't have to be anything different because you changed. Be yourself.
In closing with you, we live in a society now where we have lost faith and hope in so many of our different levels of leadership, whether it's the presidential or the local politics, school teachers, pastors, parents. It used to take a village to raise a kid, and now the villages are destroying our kids. So our kids are reaching, and they've lost trust and hope in people. There are young people who won't go to church anymore because church hurt is some of the worst hurt in the world. You were blessed to have people forgive you for murdering somebody, but there are young people who don't get forgiven for much lesser things. Churches denounce them or don't want to be associated because of their drug affiliation or their gang affiliation. So now people are unchurched and don't want to be bothered with church, I want you to look into the camera and talk to a closing remark to the young men and women who feel church doesn't have a place for them anymore.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
I say this. I say, first of all, that building that you entering into where they tell you come on Sundays, Jesus doesn't call that a church. He calls the place where his spirit dwells, the people who believe and confess it. They accept him into their life, they are the church. So that's the first thing I'll say is know that you are the church. If you love the Lord and you confess him as your Lord and Savior, you become a part of the body of Christ. And the building is full of people that's trying to get to know God, but they still people. And sometimes they can't see God in other people because it's hard for them to see God even working in their own lives. So don't take it personally. Just know that if your relationship with God, God wants to have that intimate and personal with you. And he don't want you to worry about what anyone says. So if you've been hurt or disappointed, or even looked down on or cast away by someone who confesses to be a Christian or that go to church, that's an opportunity for you to practice forgiveness and your Christian character. So just try to forgive that person and know that the story didn't end with what they think about you. You can actually begin to write your story by how you respond to it. So that's my encouragement.
My man, Ray. Thank you, bro.
No question. God is good.
I shall recover everything that I lost, everything that the devil took from me. God will.
Today we have also Jeffrey Body, who the judge told you had 20 years for voluntary manslaughter, of which you did 6 years and 9 months.
Yeah.
Once again, less than half.
Yeah.
Way less than half.
Yeah.
How old were you when you called your judge?
I was 17.
17. Another person being tried as an adult. Let's
Yeah.
go back to 16.
Okay.
Tell me, who is Jeff at 16?
Jeff at 16 was finding himself.
What does that mean? I hear that all the time, finding yourself.
Finding himself, I say that now looking back because I'm learning. But at that time, I had already been through a lot of things in life. I had seen my mother on drugs and at a young age and having to deal with that. So one of my aunts who was like a mother that was around when my mother was out and on her binge, like I laid in the bed with her while she was dead most of the day when I was like 9 years old. She had died in a heart attack in her sleep, but I didn't know. So, I laid in the bed with her all day just thinking she sleep.
At 9?
At 9. So I was thinking she sleep. But I look at it now and I look through my life and start seeing how God was real because the whole day I sat in the house with her a whole school day, nothing happened. And it wasn't until one of my cousins who was like 16 at the time came home. In the moment she walked in the house, the phone rang and my aunt's boyfriend called and asked what she was doing. I told him to sleep. And he asked, would she sleep all day? And then he gave, told me who else in the house, my cousin, went and checked on her. She was gone. So I look at it even then, God protected me from something I wouldn't have been able to handle in the house by myself. But all that being said, coming around, it built like a little exterior for me where I was finding myself because I thought I was grown a little bit and I tried to take pressure off of my parents and my mother and them by taking responsibility for myself. Because once my mother got clean and she was home, I didn't want to ever see her go back. Mm-hmm. So I took a lot of pressure on myself to alleviate things from her. I had to battle with emotions, learning from all of that. I locked myself up emotionally where, I learned now as I look back, I was really trying to understand myself and the intelligence I had. I was always set apart.
Was your father in your life then?
My father was in my life.
Were they together?
They never were married. Okay. So they were together when I lived in California for a while growing up there. They had separated and my mom took us to California. And then while she was going through some of her troubles and she was actually incarcerated, my mother, we moved back here with my father. And then when she got clean, she came back.
Take me to the day you caught your charge. What happened? What happened? That day, what went through your mind? What happened?
So the day I called my charge, it had been basically this ongoing situation between a group of my friends and a couple other people growing up in
Group,
Atlanta.
as in gang or
Just
friends?
group. In this area, of course, was never really a heavy gang thing. I guess that's kind of changing, but it was neighborhoods and area you were in.
It was a gang without being called a gang.
I guess crew, so I grew up in Landover, and so around Glenard, and then so me and my friends basically used to get back and forth with these other guys.
And everybody was strapped.
No, so ongoing, we had a couple fights and tidbits, and so basically we tried to leave the situation alone because I guess if you look at it in these ways, these dudes were from an area that was a nice area, so we felt like they wasn't even worth our time of getting into it almost, and we knew what could come from it, so we tried to leave it alone for a while.
So what happened that day?
That day, one of our close friends, a female friend, went to school with them. We didn't go to school with these guys. She did. And so for a while they had been trying to get back to us as we were leaving alone. So they continued to, press her, threaten her and saying, if your brothers don't come up here, then we're going to do something to you. So as that progressed, she kept telling us. One day we finally decided, like, all right, well, we're going to go up there and, have a fight with these dudes and see them since they keep calling us out.
At school?
At the school. So none of us went to that school, but we were going to go up there afterwards. So after school, they got out a little bit later than me, so I went to school that day, left, came home, everybody met up around the neighborhood, and then we went up there to the school to fight. And so we get up there, basically, one girl we know tells us to stay out off the school grounds, so we park across the street. An older guy from that neighborhood pulls up on us, and he jumps out the car, he pulls a gun out, and he's saying, y'all don't want these problems, y'all better go get y'all old heads, your big brother, somebody.
Wow.
And do it. So growing up how we grew up, rough, having certain situations, again, like trying to be individually men, like we all had guns as well, not even out on us at that time, but available. So when you go in the mindset to fight and somebody jumps out and pull a gun, it kind of changes the tide.
Exactly.
And so I was always a little different than the rest of my friends. I guess I thought a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I said, let's leave. I was like, well, we'll come back and deal with this another time because now they've escalated it. And so we left. We ended up waiting for the girls, our little sister, and them to come home, come and get out of school, make sure they was, situated. We left, took them back around the neighborhood. But as we were leaving, the guys we actually went up there for had got out of school too. So they started throwing stuff at our car, yelling everything as we pulled off. So we went and dropped the girls off. But now everybody's irritated because of everything that's happening. So we said, all right, we're going to go back up there and fight them today.
But you got your guns first.
We'll go back and fight them. I didn't, but a couple of my friends had grabbed their guns. And so as we ride back up there, one of my friends set the gun on the middle of the seat, and it's another car behind us. We pull up, we're going past, we see a whole group of people down from the street. They see us come past, and so they start pointing. There they go, and a couple of them start, the guys who pulled up on us with the gun originally is there, so everybody started running to the cars. And so we pull past, we stop, and we talk about it. We say, do we want to get out and fight them right now or wait till later again? We decide to come back later, and we like, all right, we'll come catch them later on. As we're going back up the street, a couple of them are standing in the middle of the street looking for us to come back down because we had to go back that way to get to our neighborhood. And so as we're coming, they're pushing like the crowd of people back from the street, and the guys who ran to their car are running up towards like us, hands up pointing. So as they're running towards the car, I'm staring, and it's almost like everything's moving in slow motion as you watch this happening. And I'm like, they about to shoot at the cars. And so as it's going, I just grab the gun off the seat and I start shooting at them. And then the guy behind me started shooting in the car behind me, and then they started shooting at us. And so it was an exchange of gunfire as we shot up the street. And then later on, probably about later that day, like I heard a couple people got shot, 3 people got shot that day. And then one girl eventually ended up passing from.
But you don't know which one of y'all bullets killed her.
No.
But they charged all y'all for the murder.
Well, they charged me and my co-defendant, who was a shooter, and then none of them out there that was outside got charged.
Wow. Take me to court. Did you have a jury trial?
I didn't know. I took a plea.
Took a plea. So your mom is there with you maybe in court?
My mom, my sisters, my grandmother, my father.
Had you been in jail before?
No, I had
Never
no charges.
been in jail?
No.
Never. This is their first time having to hear a sentence.
Yeah.
And they're sitting behind you.
Yeah.
Were you nervous? Scared? Sad?
I felt kind of a peace because through my journey and being incarcerated, I had kind of started really walking in and learning my faith. And one of the reasons for taking my plea was I prayed on it really heavy. And for some reason, 5 years just kept sticking out. I just kept hearing this voice of 5 years. And so I denied taking the plea 3 times. And my lawyer kept trying to get me to take it.
And once again, they try to get you to take pleas to prevent from having a jury trial.
Yeah.
And they say what they tell you, if you take a plea, you have a chance of getting a lesser sentence than a jury would send you 50 to life, whatever.
Yeah.
So when he tells you, when you hear those numbers come out, 20 years, what went through your head?
It was a balance. 20 years for me personally, I felt okay because I was facing death and life. So 20 years, I couldn't fathom it. I was only 19 years at the time.
Did you look back at your mom?
I looked at my mother, and that crushed me.
Because she was probably broken down.
My mother broke down crying. My sister, you hear them bawling, like you hear the wells come out, and the hurt. And at that moment, you can't think about yourself. You can just think about what you've now caused your family and what you about to have to go through.
I had an experience last year where I went to court with a young man who, just like yourself and a couple others that I spoke with today, between the time he committed the crime and the sentencing, he got his life together.
Yeah.
He wasn't the gunman. He wasn't the one who pulled the trigger. But at that point, he got himself together so much that all of us wrote him letters. We wrote all kinds of beautiful letters for him. Mm-hmm. And even the victims, the guy did not die. He was left disabled. Even the guy's mother testified about how she could see the young man must mean what he says. Yeah. But then the man's girlfriend talked about how she had to give up her job to take care of him. She had to give up her apartment to move in with him. He can't use the bathroom on his own. He can't even eat on his own. He's almost a vegetable in a sense. The judge, who was leaning towards giving his kid a lenient sentence, he said, son, I can't. He felt obligated to give more. And when we thought he was going to get off with the lesser, because he did not pull the trigger himself, they gave him, I think it was 9 years. And I'm not his father, but as a father figure, I felt helpless. Yeah. I broke down crying. I didn't know what to do because my hands were off. I couldn't hold his hand anymore. Yeah. His mother, her hands were gone. So that's why I asked you, what was it like for your mom? So now you're going from jail to a prison. Yeah. What was that like for you?
It was different. It's unknown territory. So as anybody, when you walk in unknown territory, you have a nervousness. I wasn't scared.
Did you know anybody inside?
I knew people that I met while in jail, and then a couple people, my co-defendant, and that was about it. And then I had a private investigator that was on my case that I got really close with. She's been working in industry for years, so she knew people and she connected me.
At what point did prison ministry jump in here?
So prison ministry jumped in jail, where I really dedicated actually with Raynard, who is also here. We got in together actually and just really started digging in. And so once I went to prison, I was already fully invested in. And so it was just really getting used to the actual culture of going to church and a different thing.
I had the privilege of working with you at 2 different prisons.
Yeah.
And both prisons, especially the first one, there are guys who come down to church for routine because I'm supposed to be in church on Sunday. Yeah. There are guys who come to church because they want to impress other people. See, look, y'all, I'm in church. Then you got some guys who got a passion about them. You'd be so passionate about it. The stuff that you were writing, the stuff you were singing, it was so serious that when you left that institution, I didn't know you were going down the street. I was worried because I didn't know if I'd see you again because this system is so huge. Yeah. Next thing I know, I go down the street, there you are again. I was so happy to see you, and you were there. So, how did you go from 20 years to 6 years and 9 months?
God, that 5 years I kept hearing came around. So I did 6 years, but what that 5 years was that I kept hearing when I took the plea, my lawyer said, in 5 years, we're going to go back to court. And so exactly almost 5 years from there, I was sentenced. I went back to court, and the judge heard it, and she looked at everything I've been doing, and she felt the sincerity.
Was the family of the victim there at all?
They were not. Okay. They called and they talked to him, but the judge said she was not going to hold up her decision because even if they were there, she don't think it would have changed anything she had going on. She felt that strongly about it.
Since you've been home, have you had any contact with anybody connected to that family?
Have not.
Have you thought about what it would be like if you did?
Yeah, and the sad part about it is I understand when you do things in life, just because you change, it doesn't change the effect you've had.
Exactly, yeah.
So you just stay faithful and stay prayed up and understanding that just walk your path and stay out of situations, stay there, and hopefully the scripture, reigns true where no one will be rushed to judgment to hurt God's anointed.
You're here today doing this piece with me.
Yeah.
And this is awesome. But do you ever have situations in your day-to-day, your neighborhood, your job, around your friends who, when people find out where you've been all this time and what you were there for, that you have to deal with an unforgiving public? Or people weird stares?
Amongst some of the people, friends, I kind of separate from them because there's a lot of people still in that lifestyle. So to them, it's natural. And I've met people along my journey. I don't just outright tell everybody, but then because it takes place. But people I've shared it with, it's been a certain connection. And a lot of people just look at where I am now and what I'm doing, and they're overjoyed. And so they're just like, it's amazing where you can come from.
How old are you again now?
I'm now 28.
To sit across the table from 16-year-old Jeff,
Yeah.
what would you do besides smack him upside his head? What would you say to him, knowing what these next 16 years are going to be like?
I would tell him, follow his heart. Follow his heart. I always knew then that I was more intelligent in a sense than the people I was around. And I knew outside the box. I had just got accepted to college. So it would be follow your truth. Be that individual, even though you know you're intelligent. Use that. No need to be out here running around. Trust your loyalty. Make sure that the people you loyal to are loyal to yourself.
And that, with that said, what is your Facebook name again?
Loyalty is forever.
Loyal, that's it.
Yeah.
Finally, I want you to look into the camera, and we talked for a minute about what it meant to you to look at your mom and hear your sister wail in court. What would you say to other young men who they're about to take their mamas through the same thing? They're about to hear the same screams. What would you say to them who feel like this the life I live, man? I'm good. I got this.
Yeah. So if I can speak to anybody that can hear it, just understand that culture and that mind state is so wrong. It's so unnatural. Even though we brought up in it, and I understand the truth to know that some lifestyles we're in, some situations we don't create, and we feel like we need the gun. We feel like that this is our way of survival. Seek something, try to find somebody. If you can't find it in your family, find the help and get out, because life is short. I missed a lot of time with my mother, and unfortunately a few years after I came home, very shortly my mother passed away. So I look at it now like a lot of time I missed. I could have been sharing with my mother. I could have been sharing with my family. I could allow her to see more. Even though she seen me come home and start being successful, she could have seen her son reach different levels, and I could have took care of her in some ways. So think about not only what you're going to take from yourself, what you're going to take from your family, mentally, spiritually, financially, because they're going to invest into you. But just think about that time you can't get back, and love them. Love them while they're here. Love them while you're still there before you have a chance to make a mistake. And think about it. If you can't find it in your family, unfortunately everybody don't, find it in somebody else. Family is all around. So seek somebody out. Seek somebody like Minister Tate, who going to show you that love, who will embrace you. Because unfortunately, if you don't get it from your family, it's there. But somebody love you. If they don't, I love you. And know that you are definitely welcome and you're definitely cared for, and life is greater than the situation and circumstances you're in.
My man, Dr. Jeff. Love you, God. Appreciate you. It's amazing of the men that I've talked to today. The first one, Delante, was given 30 years and only did 15. Ray was given 20 years, only did 6. Jeff was given 20 years, only did 6. And here you are. Tim was given 20 years and only did 9 for a first-degree sex offense. How old were you at the time?
18.
18. Tell me who was 17-year-old Tim? Who are you?
17-year-old Tim was a troublemaker.
In what sense? Mischievous or actual real trouble?
Mischievous. Class clown.
Okay, there's a difference. Troublemakers can be, the class clown or kid who always stealing stuff or shooting people. That's different kind of troublemakers they have nowadays. So you were the bad boy, naughty kid. So were you living with mom and dad at the time?
I was living with mom.
Mom. So take me to when it happened. What happened?
Issues with mom, I basically was kicked out of the house. I moved in with a friend of mine and his family.
At the age of
18.
18, you kicked out with a friend. Okay.
Things got a little heated between me and the friend after being there for about 30 days. His younger sister, I would be in charge of babysitting from time to time. Walking in her room, she was watching porn.
At what age?
13.
A 13-year-old kid watching porn and you're babysitting her.
Correct.
What did you say when you saw her watching porn?
At that time, I didn't know her true age. But I told her to turn it off. She needed to stop watching it. I asked her where she got it from. She got it from her dad's collection.
Was it a DVD or something?
VHS,
Okay.
something along those lines. So I basically told her to turn it off, leave it alone. She kept on telling me how much she liked me and wanted to mess around, and I allowed her to give me oral sex.
Okay. Was that the end of that?
That was the end of it. I ended up getting kicked out of the house for beating up her brother, which was my close friend at the time. And that was the end of it.
So at what point did you get arrested for this?
2 years later.
2 years later. Why was so long? You're 20 now, right?
I was 20. I was questioned by an officer. The officer told me that she got caught messing around with somebody else in the woods, and after being questioned by her mom, that she learned it from me.
So let's go to when you got your sentence. Were you still 20 now, or was it years later, or
I was 20.
did you have a jury trial, or did you cop a plea?
I caught the plea.
And what did they tell you may happen if you didn't cop a plea?
The max I was facing was like 65 or 70 years.
65 or 70 years. So with the plea, they told you you might be doing 20.
Yes.
Did that scare you?
To an extent. Of course, as a kid, I was watching the prison movies. You always see different things happening. So yeah, I was a little scared.
So, what was your parents' reaction? Were they with you in court?
My mother and sister were on board.
What was their reaction when they heard 20 years?
They were upset. They were crying a little bit.
Did you cry?
I didn't know.
Now, I had the privilege of meeting you, I would say maybe 10, 12 years ago.
2003.
Wow, 15 years ago. And I remember you were very passionate about worship. And I used to call y'all the number 10 because you were the little skinny guy. You hung with the big old fat guy. I'm not going to name him. But you guys were very close. I remember when they sent you to ECI, he was worried about you because I think he felt he had to protect you. Then I heard once you got down to ECI, something terrible happened to you. What happened?
I was attacked 3 different times.
Were you ambushed in a cell?
No.
What was the attack for?
Most likely what I was looking for.
So that was my worry, because I know that guys that are in jail for a sexual offense, especially on children, even though you were 18 and she was 13, still a child, and they tend to not do well. And I remember hearing about the fight. I don't remember who told me, someone told me. I was terrified for you. Did you think you'd ever get out of jail?
You know, it was, if, you know, part of me was wondering if I was going to end up dying in prison.
Did you want to die?
No.
Did you ever give up on yourself at all?
No.
You knew at some point you were going to come home.
At some point, I believed I was going to come home.
What was your reaction when they dropped your time all the way down to 9 years?
I managed to wait out. You know, with good time and all that, I did it day for day. There was no parole, early release.
Wait a minute. Your sentence was what?
I got 20 years, all suspended with 12. And then 9.
Oh, all suspended with 12. Okay, I got it.
So I did 9 on 12.
So you go out of the prison. Where were you released at? Down there or up here in D.C.?
They released me in Baltimore City.
What was that like for you to come home? Were you worried about what happened to you? Because in your situation, you have to register as an offender. And again, when people hear about registries for sex offense, the worst case scenario comes in everybody's mind.
Absolutely.
And the most perverted things come into mind. But you have somehow managed to overcome all of the stigmas of people who come out of jail as a sex offender. I understand you have a family now.
I got married. 2 stepsons that was on weekends. I have a 5-year-old daughter and an 18-month-old son.
And a very prosperous business. A car dealer. Correct.
I am a sales manager.
What would you say the role of prison ministry had with any of this, if at all?
You know, when I got locked up, I wasn't really going to church. I wasn't doing any type of ministry whatsoever. Getting locked up gave me that chance going to church. Gave me that chance to finally forgive people that did me and my family wrong.
And you feel like you have forgiven people?
Absolutely.
Have you forgiven the men that beat you up in jail?
Yes.
If you can go back and talk to that kid that was babysitting those kids that day, what would you say to him?
I tell me think twice. Think twice, and you just never know, who you're going to hurt. You're not just hurting that victim, you're hurting everybody around you.
You have a daughter surrounded by 3 brothers. Do you find yourself, because of your conviction, what you were convicted of, being even more sensitive to your daughter and careful about who's around her?
Oh, 100%.
I watched you with your children. I watched you with the people surrounding your children. I've been to your home. And again, it's been so important for me to have you on this piece because the world could be the most unforgiving place ever. Ever. As I mentioned earlier in this piece, you can do all the great things in the world, but the moment you do one bad thing, all your good is forgotten. And you have found a place to find peace with others by having peace with yourself. What would you say to the camera to other men who may have some sexual challenges, I'm gonna call it, whether it's with children or it could be a grown man that has sexual demons that can cause him to rape someone? What would you tell them as far as, and these men have gone through the conviction and now they're about to come home and they don't think they can survive the streets as a registered sex offender. What would you say to them? How do you survive this?
Of course, it's always a struggle. Honesty is the #1 key. unsuccessful because of going to job interviews and being 100% honest. Because I'm going to do a criminal background test. This is what you're going to find. But I will do whatever it takes to do the job that I need to do. Surround yourself with people that's going to bring you up and not bring you down.
I gotta say the thing about you, I have found it amazing. I've known you for many years, and since you've been out, we've talked on many occasions about your past. And you've never been anything short of transparent. That's been you from day one. And I've talked to other people about you, and I'm like, why would he tell people that he's not telling people his past to glorify his past. He's telling people his past so you can understand his present. You can understand that if you fall down, you can get back up too.
Absolutely.
I'm proud of you, man.
Thank you.
Keep it going. Don't ever stop. Love you.
I shall recover everything that I lost, everything.
Well, we talked a lot with men who have been in the system, who have gone through making bad choices and having to pay for it. You've heard these men talk a lot about looking over their shoulders in court at their moms and dads and having to deal with the pain of their mothers and fathers being broken by their bad decisions. And today I want to talk with this beautiful lady here. This is Maureen Reagan. She's the mother of William Reagan, who spent how many years total in jail?
To almost 11.
Almost 11 years. William, I met William in Patuxent Institution. I can describe him as one of the coolest cucumbers I've ever seen. He has such a kind and stern quietness that when he walked into the room, he was a barber and his hair was always on point. And no matter what happens, when I go to the prison, first thing he's checking before he hugs me or shakes my hand, check my line, check the back, and he'll pop my head. Man, who did this to your head? He had this thing about him. And he had a quiet loudness about him. He didn't make a lot of noise in the services, but people knew when he was there. And I remember when he got sick, we would be walking down the hall going to service, and he would walk and bump into people and bump into the walls, and he didn't realize he was doing it. I said, dude, what are you doing? Man, I ain't doing nothing. And he would laugh it off. And I understand they put him on admin lockdown, and he would laugh at them. He would pass it on the floor, and they thought he was joking. They thought he was playing. All the while, what was his condition?
He had 4 lesions on his brain.
4 lesions, pretty big ones too.
Big ones.
And next thing I knew, out of nowhere, he was in the infirmary. Then next thing I knew, they'd taken him out to the hospital. And then I'm like, what's going on? What was Billy like as a kid?
Energetic, loyal.
The oldest of how many?
Happy. Sorry?
Oldest of how many kids?
6.
6. And how old was he when he got in trouble?
He had just turned 22.
22. And did you have any idea what was going on in his life at that moment?
I did not.
What was his charge?
Attempted murder.
Attempted murder. So when you got the phone call that your son had been picked up for attempted murder,
I got a phone call that he had been arrested. I did not know what he had done for, it might have even been a week. Until I went to see him. No one told me.
He told you when you went to visit him?
He told me when I went to visit him.
Were you shocked?
I was shocked.
Did he own a weapon?
Not that I knew of. And not while he lived in my home, as far as I know, but he had not been living with us at that time.
Between the time he got arrested and the time he got a sentence, how long was that? Do you remember? Probably
about 6 months. The whole time was kind of a blur, but I would say it was about a 6 month.
Did he do a plea deal as well, or did he?
No, he had a trial. It was not a jury trial. He just went before a judge.
And the judge found him guilty.
Yes.
How many years did they give him?
15 to 25.
15 to 25. I'm sure those numbers are bringing it back in your head for years. What was your reaction when you heard, as a mom? You were sitting behind him, I'm sure, in court.
He was not near me. He wasn't right in front
Was
of
he
me. This
behind the glass
courtroom was
wall?
set up a little bit differently, so he was off in the distance a little bit at an angle.
Could he see
So
you?
he could look at me, and he did, yes.
When he said 15 to 20,
Oh, I lost it.
was your
I
family
was
with you?
broken. Yeah, I had most of my family. My younger children were
Can you
not
remember
there.
his reaction?
I think that he halfway expected it, and I could see the hurt that he had for me.
Now, I have to take you here just for a quick moment. I promise it won't be long. Take me to when they took him out of the courtroom to begin his sentence.
As a mom, I wanted to grab him and run out of the courtroom with him and take him home.
That had to be the longest drive home for you
It
ever.
was a blur again.
Were you worried about your children, how they were going to do?
Oh, I was. I mean, everybody, the younger ones didn't really understand what was going on. He had been gone out of the house for maybe a year, so, we really didn't know what was going on in his life. We didn't have a lot of contact with him at that point. So it was just so shocking.
Take
To
me to
everybody.
when you got the phone call, because he had never been sick, if I understand, right?
Right.
Never been sick.
No.
You get a phone call. What was that phone call?
Well, I had gone into work one morning and they had been trying to reach me from our main office that I had to call this doctor in Baltimore about my son. And I was like, my son?
Baltimore.
I really did not, it didn't connect. I was like, wow, what in the world is going on? And I called and he said, we have your son here. And I'm like, which one? And he said, William. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? And he said, you need to get here. He's very sick and we need to do brain surgery on him right away. And I want you here before we take him in. He thought that I needed to see him before he went into surgery, that it was pretty serious.
Was he conscious at the time?
He was.
Was he in pain?
He was in pain. He had been in pain for a while.
So after the surgery, how long was it before they told you he's going home because he's not going to make it?
Well, I was told by one of his doctors that he probably wasn't going to make it home, that he probably wouldn't make it beyond that week.
And if I'm correct, when a person, regardless of how much time they have, if you get terminally ill, the doctor can deem that you're about to die, they'll release you to go home to your family.
That's
on
right.
a medical leave,
That's
release.
right. And that same doctor told me he had already started that process.
So you picked him up, or did they deliver him home?
Oh, I picked him up. From the hospital.
So having him back, because I've seen your home.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful home, beautiful atmosphere, lots of trees, lots of the nature sounds, which is very tranquil.
It is. It's a very nice place.
Did you see an improvement in his health when he came home?
Oh, yes. He was so happy to be home. Although we did have to stop and get cheeseburgers on the way home.
I remember you called and you said, "Can you come see him?"
Mm-hmm.
And you were so inviting to me. I was like, "Wow, I feel like I've known you
Chris,
forever."
all he talked about was you.
Oh man, I love
I
him
need
so
to call
much.
Chris. I need to call Chris. Can
He
you get me a
did,
phone?
he did.
And we did. We got him his own phone.
And I remember I was rushing to get out there, and your children, I felt like I've known y'all, because y'all just grabbed me and brought me in, and there he was. And I was fighting my emotions because I did not like seeing his head was all stapled up, and he looked horrible compared to what I'm used to seeing.
Yeah.
And we helped get him out to the back porch.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here fighting back tears, and he was so peaceful. It was ridiculous.
It's
almost,
what he had wanted ever since he
and
had
I
first
said,
been
I
locked
got on my
up.
knees. I says,
to be
"Man, are
home.
you okay?" He said 3 words. You know what they were?
Oh, I know what those words were. God's got me.
There it is. He kept on saying that. I said, "Okay." And in my head, I'm like, "Okay, God's got you, but dude, look at you. You look horrible. Come on here." He didn't
see
go
it that way.
there. I was so blessed, and I believe your children and your relatives learned a lot from his strength. I don't think I could have done it on that level. So The morning that the Lord decided to let him come home, the night before I was there at the house, and you told me, you said it may be soon. And I kissed him, and I left, and I got a phone call from you early the next morning. He says, he's with God now. God's got him. And I didn't go to work. I came straight to your house. And all of his family was sitting around the room.
We were all night, all
Everybody
that
was
night.
there. And the same peace that I saw on the back porch when he was alive, I saw the same peace in him. Oh, we all cried, but it was for us, not for him. I remember the funeral and the Redskins and all that. It was such a peaceful thing. And you have to be happy that since he had to go, he was able to go at home, not in prison.
Absolutely.
What do you think it would have been like for you had you found out he died in jail?
Devastating. It would have been awful. All he wanted to do was to be home with his family.
Do you ever feel guilty as if you failed at some point?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Why?
He was my responsibility, and there were things that I should have seen that I didn't.
But do you feel like you did the best you knew how?
I did the best I
Maureen,
knew
that's
how.
what we're required to do. You're not God. Just like a school teacher. My son had a teacher who taught the best math in the world, the best everything. All of her kids had A's. And one of her students wound up in jail after school. Did that mean she failed as a teacher? No. She did what she was required to do. And it's up to our kids to choose to take what we've taught them, apply it or not. So I want you, from me, to be encouraged. We all make mistakes now. No, there's not a perfect parent out here. Parenting is an ongoing learning curve.
Absolutely, it is.
So I want you to look into this camera behind me and talk to mothers who, first answer this question. What advice would you give a mother who has got to let her son or daughter go behind bars for an extended period of time? How would you tell them how to get through this?
Well, first of all, you have to be there for them. You can't give up on them. You have to support them. And I know for me personally, it was so difficult to visit him. And I know I didn't as much as I should. And I think that would have been so much better for him if
Difficult
I
as in hard for you to watch him behind bars?
Yes.
Okay.
And to get up and leave and to know that he has to be there for God knows how long, because for us, he kept trying to get before parole board and was denied so many times that we just figured he'd be there for the full 25 years. But yeah, it's very difficult to go and visit, but do it. Do it, you gotta, because they need you.
And finally, what advice would you give a mother my mother we lost my brother, his wife, and his 4 children to a drunk driver, all 6 of them at one time. And I thought my mother would be gone after that. And it was the worst thing my family ever dealt with. We had open caskets of all of them. One of my nieces was decapitated. It was just horrible. But my mother made it through that. And she has so much powerful advice for women who have had to you're not supposed to bury your children. You're just not.
No.
What would you say to a woman who has to bury their son, their daughter, whether it's at the hands of somebody else or from illness?
You just have to give it to God. I know for me, my comfort is that he had that faith and he trusted in God and he wasn't afraid. And you just have to let God take control.
Grace beyond the walls. This piece could actually be 18 hours long if we let it, because there's so much we could talk about. But the one thing I hope everybody takes away from everything you've heard today in this piece is you have to find a way to forgive people. It's okay to have your period of hurt, you have your period of frustration, but when you forgive people, you don't free them, you free yourself. You free yourself. And those of you all that are watching this thing who had to go to prison for a while and come home, I hope these stories encourage you that you don't have to return back to the person you were. You don't. There's a forgiving God that has a way out for you to do better and be better. And finally, to you parents and loved ones who had to watch your children go behind bars after you've done the best you can, don't beat yourself up. All you can do is all you can do. God does not require you to be him. He requires you to trust him. So after you've done all you can, yes, parents, give it to God. Believe me, there's love inside the wall, but there's always grace beyond the walls. God bless you guys. This is Grace Beyond the Walls. Over the next few minutes, you're going to be meeting some very personal. I'm sorry. Now, my next guest today is Raynard Dugger. Cut. What's that do? Raynard. I said Raynard.
Cleophas Dugger.
Right.
Cletus Dugger.